Welcome once again to the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. You're listening to us live on MSP Waves Radio, hosted by the Minnow Support Project, a community of Steemit users who are dedicated to helping newcomers to the Steem blockchain achieve success through community building, networking, and mutual support. I'm DJ Damashii, also known as Rodeo670 on Steemit. Or if you're at a rave and you see me, I'm known as Chaos. And you're tuning in to the fifth live broadcast of the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. Thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in to the previous 4 episodes of the first ever Steam-related EDM radio show. And thank you, of course, to everyone who's tuning in right now. Before I begin, I do have to inform you all that MSP Waves Radio and its owners take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show host or their guests. Statements and show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the radio station. The material on the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii is provided for educational and informational purposes only. So, I recently started this new, format or whatever you can call it, of starting my show off with a song to get everyone pumped up, right? So here is Party Till We Die by Timmy Trumpet. All right. And once again, that was Party Till We Die by Timmy Trumpet. And party till we die we shall. Right on into tonight's show, right? So, since this is the 5th episode, and I've been trying to get a bunch of other people, to tune in and to check out this show, I figured I would start this off by kind of briefly going over what I've talked about in previous episodes of this show, right? So, I just wanted to give, a kind of refresher course or whatever for those who are just tuning in tonight for the first time ever, and who don't really know what my show is about or what I have talked about in the past. So yeah, let's begin by going over my very first radio show, the premiere broadcast of The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. Man, that show was a huge learning experience for me. I thought I was prepared for it. I really did. I put in so much work into putting together my script, because for that first show I actually did have a script. It wasn't show outlines like I do now, but that first show I basically I just went over what my show was about. I wanted to really elaborate what I wanted to do with my show, which is show the human face of the electronic dance music culture and community, while also discussing the more esoteric or spiritual philosophical concepts that underlie the whole scene. And then I also, for that show, I went into PLUR, which is the central tenets of EDM culture. It stands for peace, love, unity, and respect. And I went over that in depth, and I explained each letter, or I guess, my personal understanding of what each letter embodies and represents. A lot of people since then have come up to me and told me, like, yeah, dude, that's you explained PLUR so perfectly, and that's exactly what it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that, my understanding of PLUR is what other people understand about it too. Yeah. And so that first show, though, I was only prepared to talk for the first hour, basically, and I was supposed to have a guest come on during my second hour to help me fill it out, and just to enjoy being part of my very first radio broadcast ever. But we couldn't get his audio to work, and so I was kind of a nervous wreck for that second hour of my show, because I had no idea what to talk about. All I knew was, in the back of my head, there was this voice that kept saying, just keep talking. Talking about random things is better than leaving dead air on your very first radio show ever, right? So I just rambled on and on and on, and I don't know how I pulled it off, but somehow I did, and I was able to talk for 2 hours straight. It was so crazy. And yeah, to think when I first was applying for this radio show, I thought to myself, how the hell am I ever going to fill out 2 whole hours of airtime on the radio, But somehow I pulled it off for my very first show, so kudos to me, I guess. Regardless, that whole first show was super problematic, but I learned a lot, like I said, and I talked about PLUR a lot, and I got some pretty good reception. That first show, I would have to say, was the most listeners I've had since then. Last week came pretty close, I think, from what I gather. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And Stace says I did good even with that little hiccup with my guest and the audio. So thank you, Stace. I really appreciate that. So yeah, that was the very first episode of my radio show. The second one, episode 2, right, was the very last show of 2017, and I actually completely forgot. Like, it totally just went over my head when I was doing that show that night that it was the very last show of the old year of 2017. So I didn't really have like a New Year's theme for that show. I didn't really talk about the new year that much. What I did talk about, though, in episode 2, I decided to go over, briefly, my personal understanding of the history of the rave scene in the United Kingdom and in the United States. I went over, how raves, they take us back to the tribal days of humanity, and how the rave... I branched off from that, and I started talking about how the rave scene will lead to the end of the world as we know it. Ooh, right. I purposely used those words, though, and used like this ominous, foreboding sense, because if you really think, sorry, excuse me, if you really think about it, the way that being a part of the rave scene transforms your perspective and your mentality and just how you see life in general, it it could lead to a global paradigm shift if enough people were to discover the truths of this EDM culture that we all partake in and that we all love. It really has. I honestly believe it really has a true potential to lead to a global paradigm shift, and that's why I said in episode 2 that the rave scene, the rave culture, will lead to the end of the world as we know it. And then after I started talking about that, I went into how it helps to cultivate this mindset of unity and compassion and helpfulness, which is so different from the mindset and mentality that we grew up in as part of the society that we're in today. There's just so much to say about that, honestly. But in the second hour, though, of that second episode, I was finally able to bring my guest that I wanted to bring on from the first episode on the air, and it's none other than Cynical Optimist on Steemit. He goes by Jake out here in the community, and I met him here in the community through his work with organizing local arts and music events. And we've just been really good friends ever since then, and he and I have connected on great levels, and that's why I wanted to bring him on the show to talk about his projects in the community and his Steemit experience so far, as well as, because this show is called The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. I definitely talked to him a little bit about his dreams and plans for the world, for the future. And anyone who was listening to that show was treated to some pretty huge, like, big scheme, grandiose, like, I care about the future of humanity as a whole type of stuff. So thank you to everybody that was listening in on that episode, who got to listen and hear for themselves exactly, the kind of man that Cynical Optimist is. And with that, the third episode now. With the third episode, it was my New Year's show. Because it was the first show that I did after the New Year. So it was still fresh on my mind, this whole New Year stuff, and that was when I realized that I ended my second episode without even saying "see you guys next year." Haha, I don't know. That's like one of my weird habits to do every year, is like at the very last second or minute of the year, I just like tell everyone, "Hey, see you next year." Haha. Anyway, so episode 3 was my New Year's show, and in it I talked about the history, my understanding, I should say. I always have to say my understanding, because I'm never 100% certain that all the things that I'm saying on the air are 100% factual and true. So yeah, I for that third episode, I went over my understanding of the history of the Decadence New York, the Decadence New Year's Eve experience, as well as my own experiences at Decadence SLC here in Salt Lake City. I went over how amazing it was that I met so many new people, and I met this cool new dude who Decadence was his very first rave ever, and he was so blown away because he didn't know what Plur was, but he wanted one of my candy. And so it was a very amazing, like, mind-blowing teaching moment for me, because I taught him all about Plur, and I taught him what it stands for, and I even gave him his rave name, and yeah, it was amazing. And I talked after talking about that, I talked about the esoteric side of rave naming, and how it's kind of a nod to how initiates of the ancient mystery schools would get a new name during their initiatory rituals as they progressed through their mystery school levels, which then opened the floor for me to talk about how raves, and this was a realization that I came to while I was planning out this episode, not this one, but episode 3 of my show, and I talked about how I suddenly realized that raves are basically a modern day decentralized mystery school. And they're just open to anybody who seeks that kind of experience, whereas in olden days, mystery schools would be very, like, elitist and closed off to the masses, and hence why they're mystery schools, right? So yeah, that was episode 3 of my show, and then episode 4, last week's episode, I made it all about candy. Because people had been asking me about candy, either in the audience chat, or even on like my posts and stuff. People would ask me like, "Hey, what's candy?" And I actually, it made me realize that I have never really gone in depth into the subject of candy on my show. So I made episode 4 all about candy, and I talked about what candy is and what it represents. The like most people would just look at these colorful little pony beads, and they won't understand. They a lot of people would even get ridiculed for wearing stuff like that. And so I decided to go into all of that stuff, and then I went into the esoteric nature behind candy trading. Like how it's really the trading of candy is really an exchange of energy between two people that leaves each person involved with not just the other person's energy, but also the memories that they shared together before and after that candy trade. And along that train of thought, that line of thinking, I also then went into how in my personal opinion, candy shouldn't be traded with just anyone you meet at a rave. I mean, there are people who do that, and yay, more power to you guys that freely share your candy to random people. But I personally believe that candy is something you should share, you should trade with someone who you've made a real connection with. Because of the whole esoteric nature of it, with it being an energy exchange between two people, right? And so, yeah, that's just on me, though. I mean, by all means, if you're one of those people who loves to give candy out to random strangers at raves, keep doing your thing. That's you. That's how you understand candy, and that's you're free to do it that way. But for me, I really I would prefer, me personally, if everybody traded candy with people that they make a real connection with, and that in my ideal rave world, I guess is what I could say. People that trade candy to newcomers, especially, would then go through the whole process of explaining what plur is, and explaining what the scene is about, and they would give them the rave name too, if they don't have one yet. Yeah, so that was episode 4. It was all about candy, and then I actually also in the second hour opened up the lines for some guests, and the very first guest I had was Brandy BB from Oregon. She is on Steemit actually, and that is her username on Steemit. It's Brandy BB, and she talked about her experiences with candy, and with EDM in general, and with going to festivals. And then after she came on, I brought my friend Sabrina from Arizona on the air as well, and she talked about her candy experiences, and her experience as a raver and what it means to her. And I mean, like I said, this show is called The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii, so naturally in that episode I also asked both of them what their dreams were. And it's really interesting because most people wouldn't consider their answer, but their very first answer was that they just wanted to be happy. And that's, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, well, but what's really your dream? But I mean, who's to say that that's not a real dream? Like, everybody just wants to be happy. I mean, if you don't want to be happy, then that's on you, I guess. But yeah. Anyway, that was episode 4, everyone. Yeah. And so this is now episode 5. But before I go into that, I'm going to take a short little musical break, and I'm going to play a song by one of my favorite duos, Tritonal. This is Lifted. Yeah, that wasn't supposed to play. But anyway, again, that was Lifted by Tritonal. So before I go on, I do just want to thank everybody for tuning in. You guys are awesome. I see Ankopolo is in there, Amber Youper is in there as well, Angel, Crystal, Pacheco 30, Digital Dude, Menno, Nana Kobina, Nikki Dro 18, Nick Flossis is here. Wow, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. Rondon is here. Thank you. Stace, Two Flower, and Zella Nixik. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. So that was Tritonal. I had to play Tritonal again because I really love Tritonal. I've loved Tritonal since I first discovered them back in like 2011 or so. And I wanted to play Tritonal for this show because tomorrow actually Tritonal is coming to town. And they're going to be here for Therapy Thursdays at Sky SLC, and I'm really stoked about it because I haven't seen Tritonal in a while. I was supposed to see them when they came to the Great Saltaire with Seven Lions during the Horizon tour, because I always make it a point to see Tritonal whenever they come to town, wherever I am. But those plans fell through, unfortunately, so I was really bummed about that, which is why I was so stoked when V2 announced that Tritonal was going to be here for our Therapy Thursday. So yeah, mad props to V2, by the way, for all the hard work that they put into bringing talents like Tritonal to Salt Lake City, and into setting up, amazing festival experiences for us here in Utah. They just released the Get Lucky lineup today. Actually, they finished releasing it, and wow, everyone out here is just going crazy over how amazing of a lineup it is. Unfortunately, there's no hardstyle. I'm pretty disappointed. I'm not gonna lie, because it's going to be my first Get Lucky, and everybody was telling me that last year's was full of hardstyle, and so I can expect more hardstyle this year. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But they did go really trance heavy, and I'm really excited about that because trance is my other favorite subgenre of EDM. And I'm just really, really happy that they're bringing so many big trance names to Salt Lake City. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So, without further ado, I'm finally going to get into talking about like what my plan is for this episode, right? So, for those who have been listening, I've been briefly going over with each episode. I've kind of been briefly mentioning little bits and pieces of how crazy my whole EDM story has been so far since I came back into the scene last year. And so I think for this episode, I'm finally gonna talk about those stories in depth. And so yeah, I really want to get this out there and to really, because I feel like if I talk about this stuff, it'll give you guys, my listeners, a better picture, a better idea of what I mean when I say that EDM saved my life in 2017. And it just really changed my life and put me on this crazy new trajectory. My focus is here now, and it's hard to explain, but I will go into that, I promise. But before that, let's play a song by Andrew Rayel. This is "I'll Be There." And once again, that was "I'll Be There" by Andrew Rayel. Oh man, what a great song though, huh? Like the just the words to that song basically are how I feel about all my rave fams. There's one light or one line in that song. Um, it says, "You're the ship and I'm the lighthouse. In the fog, I'll find you where you are." And to me, that is such a profound line in this song because not only is it like, does it speak to the deeper themes of being there for your friends and, and being there to help guide them back when they've lost their way in the fogs of life. But it kind of has a more practical application for EDM festivals where, everybody always gets separated from their friends. And there's always that serendipitous moment where you find your friends again at the end and everyone's just so happy to be reunited. It's one of the best moments about raving, in my opinion. But yeah, so without further ado, though, it's festival stories time. Finally, I've been talking about this for so long now, but here it is. Finally, I guess I'll just start from the very beginning and talk about EDC last year and how amazing of an experience it was. The whole thing was completely like poorly planned for me. I didn't really have any plans going into it. I just knew that I had to buy my ticket and that was that. It was a done deal basically. And so I went out to Las Vegas after having bought my ticket, and I had nowhere to stay because I didn't plan, and I put this status out on Facebook saying, "Hey everyone, I'm in town for EDC. Like, what's everyone up to? Let's hang out." And my friends on Facebook, who I have been friends with for a while, Tori and Brad, they hit me up and they messaged me and they're like, "Hey, we're actually in Las Vegas as well for EDC. You should come hang out with us at the Luxor." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm down. Like, let's finally meet up and hang out and stuff." And so I went out there. I went out to the Luxor and I met Tori and Brad. And they then introduced me to Ronnie and George. We got around to talking, getting to know each other, and then they all finally asked me where I was staying while I was at EDC, and I told them, "Yo, I actually I have no idea. I don't have any plans. Yeah, I basically just came out here saying, well, if I have to sleep in my car, then I will. All I know is I'm making it to EDC." And so that's when George, who actually the room was under his name, he was like, "Yo, I actually have this free bed in here. Someone was supposed to split this room with me, but she bailed. And so you're more than welcome to use this room. And here's this key for the hotel. Like, you're more than welcome to." And so I was just like, "Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much." Right. So the next day, though, when we finally EDC day one, right, we got to talking about our musical selection, our musical choices, where we were going to be, and Brad and Tori wanted to go do something else, and Ronnie and I were all about that hardstyle life, and so we decided to go walk around EDC and check some of the artists out, but our main goal was to make it to the Wasteland to see all the hardstyle people. And it's funny because he and I were talking about like, "Oh, we can't go too hard because it's day one, right? Like, we got to go, we got to take it easy on day one." But as soon as we ended up parking ourselves for TNT's set at the Wasteland, we both just kind of let loose and went so hard. And so at the end of it, we both just looked at each other and was like, "Yo, we're fams," because we both found it funny that we both said, "No, let's take it soft." And then the music, man, that's the power of music. It just moved our bodies, and next thing we know, we're expending all our energy on day one of EDC. But yeah, so anyway, the reason I'm talking about all of this stuff, actually, in my post I mentioned that these raves, these festivals that I've been going to have always just blown my mind with the type of people that I've been meeting and the type of connections that I've been making, and it's really helped to formulate this newfound worldview, I guess you could call it, of how like everything is connected and we're all connected to each other, and we're supposed to be finding the tribe basically. But I will go into that later. So anyway, eventually Ronnie and I wanted to go see different sets, and so I broke off from him and I just kind of was strolling around EDC for a little while. I found my way to Galantis, actually, and I was trying to make my way into the crowd. I was like, oh, I haven't been front and center in a while. Let me try to get to front rail, right? But eventually I don't know if I just got tired or if the crowd got a little too dense for me to keep going forward, but I stopped in a random spot in the crowd. I looked over. I looked over at my right, and this dude like just happened to look over at me too, and he like nodded. He nodded at me and like said, "What's up?" And we started talking, and he was like, "Yo, where are you from?" And I'm like, "From Utah." And he starts freaking out, and he's like, "What? No way, dude, me too. What part?" And I was like, "Yo, I'm from Salt Lake City." He's like, "Oh man, I'm only like an hour away from there." And so like, yeah, that's where I met Jaden, and we became friends, and we just started hanging out because both of us couldn't believe, like, out of the thousands, like, what was it, like tens of thousands of people at EDC, that two random strangers, both from Utah, within like an hour away from each other, ended up like standing next to each other in the crowd. I just there's I a lot of people will call those coincidences, and maybe in your world it's a coincidence, but me personally, I don't believe in coincidences, and I feel like you're gonna find out as I go further into these stories. But I just feel like all these little meetings and all these people that I'm meeting and the circumstances behind our meetings, it's nothing short of like some weird divine intervention of like knowing when certain people are supposed to be in my life and when I'm supposed to be in theirs, and I just feel like the universe is like pushing us all together in this one like thing. But anyway, yeah, so I hung out with Jaden for a little while, and then one of the biggest things actually that changed my general disposition and my worldview was meeting Pam at EDC and really connecting with her. I honestly, to this day, I still don't quite remember. The memory is a little hazy for me. Sorry, Pam. But we both kind of just like gravitated toward each other at one point. And I think I was just like walking around the festival grounds, and we bumped into each other and started talking, and we just vibed really well. Like we had so much in common, and it was just crazy. We ended up holding hands too for like a good majority of the festival. Yeah, it was insane. And the reason this is such a significant event for me is because meeting Pam and like really connecting with her, that was the very first time in a long time that I actually started to think that maybe I really am a good looking guy. Yeah, because for years and years I hated the way I looked. I couldn't really like stand to see myself in a mirror. I really saw myself as this ugly dude that nobody would ever think was an attractive guy, right? And then I met Pam at EDC, and out of nowhere, like my whole worldview just like explodes, and I'm just like, oh my god. Because after Pam, like a lot of people, I don't know if like she just set my mind off in that way, and then it took me believing in it for other people to start seeing it, or yeah, I honestly don't know. But all I know is after I met Pam and after we had that crazy connection that we had, all of a sudden I actually believe in myself, and I feel like I'm a good looking guy, so thank you, Pam. Yeah. Another crazy like meeting thing that happened at EDC. So I have this friend named Chris who I met here in Salt Lake City, actually, when he came from Washington to Transmission SLC when Dada Life came, and we ended up meeting up after the show and just like really decompressing and chilling out and really connecting really well with each other, and we became good friends. And he was like, yo, I'm going to EDC too, like let's meet up. And when I was at EDC, we were trying to make it work and trying to meet up, but it just would never work out because the service was horrible on the festival grounds, and then like afterwards, nobody's really on their phones. because everybody's passed out or partying some more. But anyway, we couldn't get it to work out, so I kind of just gave up hope that I would meet up with him. And then out of nowhere, right, I just decided to go and like get some water. And out of nowhere, who do I see standing in the water line, the very same water line at the same water station that I decided to go to? My friend Chris. So we got all like excited and really happy, and we're just like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, it's so crazy that we actually ended up bumping into each other, quote unquote, randomly, right? But I just, like I said, I think the universe just knew that, he was the proper company for me at the time, and that we had to make another connection. But yeah, that's just me talking about like, metaphysical universe connection kind of stuff. But yeah, so with that, I'm gonna take another short little break, and I'm gonna play "No Money" by Galantis. All right. And once again, that was No Money by Galantis. I just wanted to take this time again to say thank you so much to everyone who's tuning in right now. You guys are all awesome, and I really appreciate you being here. I see that Agrod has tuned in, as well as Odrow. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here tonight. So, going back into this whole EDC craziness story, right? So, there during Seven Lions set, I was looking for my friends Brad and Tori, because Brad was the one who had been telling me about Seven Lions. He was like, Seven Lions, Seven Lions, Seven Lions. You can't miss it. You have to go. Like, it doesn't matter if you've never heard his music before. Just trust me. You have to go and you have to see Seven Lions. You cannot miss it. And so I took his word for it, because when somebody gets that passionate about music, you don't shut them down. You at least owe it to them, I think, to check out what this artist is that they're so passionate about. And I'm really glad I did, because so during Seven Lions set, I had just come back from like walking around the festival grounds on my own, and I was looking for Brad and Tori because they said they would be there, and so I went to this like pillar that they said that they would meet me at, but I couldn't find them, and I eventually stopped looking for them because I was like, well, it's obvious that they're not here. I might as well just try to enjoy this music. And so I kind of went further into the crowd a little bit, and that is where I met Tony and Vince, who are good friends of mine now. And so I talked to Tony for a little while. He was the first one, that started talking to me. And then Vince went off to do light shows for some people because he's a glover and a really good one at that. And so during this time that Tony and I were talking, he ended up giving me my rave name, actually, and he gave me this chaos candy, which is my favorite candy of all time, because in my eyes it symbolizes my rebirth in that moment at EDC when Tony gave me my rave name. I was born anew as this new person, and honestly it feels like I'm a completely different person today than I was before I went to EDC last year. I know that sounds like very I don't know, stereotypical raver status, but it's true. Honestly, that's how I feel about it. But yeah, so that was not being able to find Brad and Tori led me to find Tony and Vince, which led me to get my rave name, which led me to become reborn and have all this, craziness that I this crazy passion that I have for EDM right now, basically. Another crazy thing that happened to me at ADC, I met this dude, Ben Scott Schiff, who he at the time he was working for 6 a.m. Group, and he was like the main organizer, I think, of what is known as the Electric Island Festival, which happens in Guam and on Saipan as well. And it's the Mariana Islands' first ever like EDM festival experience. And so I met him because he was like waving around a Guam flag in the air. And like I said in one of my previous shows, us islanders, we get so excited whenever we find out that somebody's from our islands. So I ran up like charging basically to this Guam flag, to this dude holding this Guam flag, and I was just like, oh my god, dude, you guys are all from Guam? And he was like, yeah, man, yeah, we are. And I was just like, yo, I'm from Saipan, man, like this is so sick. I can't believe like there's people from Guam here. And so like he shared my excitement because he's like, oh hell yeah, Chelu, like Chelu is like it's like a local word that we use to mean like brother. But anyway, yeah, so we started talking, and one of my highlights with Ben was getting this Guam EDM ambassador pin from him, which I now wear on my camelback everywhere I go. And that pin actually has led to some pretty crazy encounters as well, which I will be going into further. And then the last day of EDC, oh my god, the last day of EDC was crazy for me because, so basically Tori and Brad had to leave early, because I think Brad had school or Tori had work or something, and so they couldn't stay until the very end of EDC. Me being the person that I am though, I hate leaving a party early, so I of course wanted to stay until the very last moments of EDC when they were like kicking everyone out, right? And so, I decided we had this agreement that, yeah, I'll go to EDC with you guys, and then you guys can just leave whenever you have to, and I'll find my way home, I'll find my way back to the Luxor. And that was easier said than done. But I had faith that the universe would work things out for me, just like it had been doing like the entire time. And so when EDC ended, I'm pretty sure I looked really miserable trying to find a ride home, because at one point I even made a sign asking for help, but none of it worked. One stranger was kind enough to give me a $20 bill to help with like an Uber or something, and so I was just like, oh wow, that's amazing, thank you so much. But it still didn't work. I couldn't get it figured out, so I ended up having to take the shuttle to the park and ride, And I hope that I would have better luck. I sat around at the park and ride, no hope. Everybody was leaving, and nobody was going the same direction I was going. So I was just like, well, I guess I'm just stranded out here until I can figure this thing out. And then some random Asian dude came up to me at that point of like my most desperate moment of about I was about to give up basically. He came up to me and he was like, he saw that I was using a portable charger to charge my phone, and he was like, hey, I was wondering if I could borrow that charger real quick to just get enough charge on my phone so I can call an Uber so I can get back to my hotel. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, dude. Yeah, here you go, use it. And so when he got done, he came back to me and returned it, and we got to talking, and I found out that he was trying to get to the Aria and I was trying to get to the Luxor, and he was just like, "Hey, it looks like the Luxor isn't too far from the Aria. Do you want to just like hop in the Uber with us and like you can just walk to the Luxor from our hotel when we get there?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, yes, that would be amazing. Like, thank you so much for extending that to me." So that's how the universe took care of me, and that's how I got home on the third day of EDC, relying completely on the kindness of strangers. Yeah. And with that, I want to play "The Calling" by Vinny Vici because one of the concerns, I should call it, that I've had from people in the past is that I haven't played psytrance yet on my show, even though I've tried to keep it, diverse. So here is "The Calling" by Vinny Vici. All right. And once again, that was The Calling by Vinny Vici. All right. So, I just got done talking about EDC and all the craziness that was EDC. I just oh man, all my festival experiences, guys, it's amazing. I honestly, when I was coming up with the outline for this show, I was like, man, how am I ever going to fill out like a whole hour basically because I had originally only wanted this segment to go for an hour so that my guests, whoever comes on, would have like a full hour, between all of them. But it's looking like that's gonna be cut a little short again this week. Sorry, guys. So yeah, let's talk about Global Dance Festival now, which was the next festival I went to after EDC last year. And the very first thing, yeah, Soundwave Sotan, thank you for tuning in. Yes, this is Shaman Radio. But yeah, so the very first thing about Global Dance Festival that I'd like to talk about is how I met my best friend, actually, who he is listening in now. Thank you for tuning in. I I had met him because he messaged me on Facebook one day after I had been talking about Glowing to Global for a while, and he and I, like Tori and Brad and I, we had been friends on Facebook for a while, but we had never actually met up in person. And one day I just get this random message from him on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, you seem like a pretty cool dude, and I think we should hang out sometime because we don't live too far away from each other. And I see that you've been posting about going to Global Dance Festival. I've never been to a rave, but I've always wanted to go, and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind if I tagged along." And I was just like, "Yeah, sure, of course, dude. Like, hell yeah. Thanks for reaching out to me and hitting me up about going to Global with me, because otherwise I would have gone on my own, but journeys like that are always better with friends, because road trip, this whole epic road trip that we had to Colorado was insane. The very first thing I should mention, actually, one of the crazy things about this whole road trip that we went on, right when we were about to leave, I was talking to this dude on Radiate, because we were working out plans to head over to Global, basically, but those didn't work out. And apparently he was also talking to this other dude, who is one of my other best friends now, Caleb. Caleb had missed out on his ride. My friend Chris, yeah, he's my friend now too, actually. My friend Chris, who was supposed to be Caleb's ride, he fell out of those plans. And so Chris, who was at the time a stranger to me and a stranger to Caleb, and Caleb and I were complete strangers to each other. Chris told me that Caleb needed help getting to Global, and so he linked us up. And when I was talking to Caleb, he was like, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah, I'm out in Tooele," and like this light bulb in my head just like went off, because my best friend was in Tooele. And so I was just like, well, dude, what are the odds that this random stranger would have been placed in our path, and that he lives like right there where you're at before you come out to get me? And so we both agreed, like, yeah, dude, let's help him out, and let's be all about this plur vibe stuff. And so this car trip was basically, complete strangers driving from Salt Lake City, Utah to Denver, Colorado. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but needless to say, we bonded a lot on that road trip. So we got into Denver, and we finally met up with Ronnie, who I just talked about, who I met at EDC through Tori and Brad. We met up with Ronnie because Ronnie was also going to Global, and we ended up staying in his hotel room and splitting the hotel room. But here is where the craziness happens. The craziness happens the next day when Ronnie came back from the airport. I guess he had gone to go pick up his friend. And that was when I met George and Andrew for the very first time ever. And Andrew has become one of my really, really good closest friends now in the whole rave scene, because of the fact that Andrew, Ronnie's friend, Ronnie, who I met at EDC through Tori and Brad, Andrew is from Guam. We were getting ready to go to Global, and I was putting on my Camelback, which that's where I put my EDM Guam EDM ambassador pin that I got from Ben. And he sees my pin and he starts freaking out, and he was like, "Yo, dude, what is up with that pin? Like, what? Are you from Guam?" And I started freaking out. I was like, "Yo, don't tell me you're from Guam, dude. Like, there's no way. What are the odds?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, both my parents are from there." Like, it was just this huge, like, mind-blowing thing because I couldn't wrap my head around, like, what are the odds that I met Ronnie through Tori and Brad because I, on impulse, decided to go to EDC. And then now I'm at, I was at Global, and out of nowhere, Ronnie brings his friend from Arizona who just so happens to also be from Guam. And so, like, we connected a lot basically because of that. And it just blew both of our minds, And then another thing that happened at Global, I had to wait for like almost 2 whole hours before I could get into Global Dance Festival because the people at Global Dance, or maybe the people at the blog that I was working on at the time, or that I was working for at the time, they got their wires crossed somewhere, and I guess my name ended up not being on the press list for a while. And so it was just this whole huge fiasco, and I was getting really upset about it because it was J Dub's very first rave ever, and like I wanted to be there for him throughout the entire experience, but here he was already on the inside waiting for me for like almost 2 hours while I was trying to get this stuff sorted out. But anyway, that actually worked out, to our favor, I guess I could say, because he ended up meeting some really cool people that I ended up meeting the next month when we went to DOS here in Utah. And so now we have all these friends in Colorado that we can stay with whenever we hit up shows over there. So it's pretty cool. And so with that, that's all there was about Global. I'm sure there's more that I'm just forgetting. But in the interest of kind of speeding this whole process up and getting my guests on the air with me at a decent time, uh, here is Bingo Players with Rattle. All right. And once again, everyone, that was Rattle by the Bingo Players. I just wanted to take this time real quick to say thank you again to everyone who's tuning in, both through the Discord or through MSP Waves Radio's website, or even directly through the Twitch stream. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting my EDM radio show. So, before I do go into this next festival segment, I do have to remind the listeners that MSP Waves Radio and its owners take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show host or their guests. Statements and show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the radio station. The material on the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii is provided for educational and informational purposes only. Alright, so the next festival that I went to last year was DOS Energy Festival right here in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was my very first festival experience in Utah. And it blew my mind, this festival. Not just like production wise and how amazing of a job V2 did with it, but just the connections that I made with people at DOS Energy were through the roof. It was insane. One of the first crazy things that happened was that I found out that my coworkers were going to DOS as well, and we had been talking about DOS leading up to it, but I think like all of our understanding of it, me and my two coworkers that went, our understanding of this whole thing was that we were all just gonna see each other at DOS, say hi, like, oh, nice to see you guys here, and go on our separate ways, right? But needless to say, that kind of didn't happen that way. Once we all met up, we all ended up sticking to each other, and it was pretty cool because it was like the formation of my very first like Utah rave fam situation. And yeah, it was really cool. Apparently that's just where the universe needed us all to be at that time, you know? So through that whole thing, not only did I learn so much more about my two coworkers that I was there with, and they learned a lot more about me, but I also became friends with this dude, Kyle, who was the boyfriend of one of my coworkers. And oh my god, the story when it comes to Kyle, it blows my mind still to this day, because so Kyle and I got to talking around for a little while, you know, during some of the festival downtime, and somehow my rave name Chaos came up, and then Kyle started freaking out, and he got all excited because his tagger name, he doesn't have a rave name per se, but he does like tagging stuff a lot, and his tagger name is very similar to my rave name. It sounds like Chaos as well, but it's spelled differently as well. And so we were both like tripping out over this insane, like, whoa, what are the odds that you know, you and I would end up like meeting and clicking and end up rave famming together, and then out of nowhere we both go by like a very similar name, right? But that's not all. So the even crazier connection behind that, or beyond that, later that night we found out that Kyle and J-Dubs actually have the same birthday. And so that's like two insane like universal connection things that like connect him to both me and J-Dubs. And so I had this like, I don't know, weird epiphany moment kind of thing where I'm just like, yo, I think the three of us are supposed to be in each other's lives, and I think we're supposed to like come up with some amazing stuff together, because it's like, what are the odds that this new dude that we just met, Kyle, like would have this insane connection to not just me but to also J-Dubs. So yeah, that's part of the whole craziness of DOS. This other crazy thing that happened, I was having this like heartfelt like raving life advice type of moment with one of my coworkers, and veterans to the rave scene will understand what I mean by that. But for people who don't know a thing about the rave scene, basically a lot of times during raves, a common occurrence is you'll just have like a really heart-to-heart, like heartfelt conversation with the people that you're with. And they'll just like kind of bare their soul to you, and you're supposed to, you know, be the supportive friend and react accordingly. And so my friend was, my coworker, who's now my friend, she was going over like her traumatic past and like all her struggles in life and stuff. And I was just there listening, you know, and being this attentive friend. And by the end of it, you know, I just said what was on my heart and mind at the time. And I basically said something to the effect of, you are enough. No matter what anybody else in this world tells you, no matter how anybody else makes you feel, I want you to know that you are enough. And what you bring to the table is enough, and you never have to put on a facade or pretend to be someone you're not. And anybody who doesn't accept that, can just go screw themselves, because they're not worth your time and energy anyway, right? And so when I was telling her this, some random guy, like, I guess was looking in our direction and was within earshot of us as this moment was happening. And so when it ended, he just like he was just like looking at us, and he was so flabbergasted, and he was just like, oh my God, that was such a beautiful moment. Like, whoa, he was so blown away. And so we just like, we started talking to each other, and we got, we became friends, and I took his contact info down. And later on in the night, I saw this random dude holding up this sick res totem, and it had a picture of res, and it said "Resbians," and I ran up to him because I love res, and I was just like, "Yo, dude, that's such a sick totem," and so he and I got around to talking, and not even like 5 minutes of us talking, who do I see coming up to us to talk to this guy too, but the guy who had witnessed my moment with my coworker earlier that night. And apparently this dude and the lesbian totem guy were best friends, and the totem guy was the one who brought the newcomer, the guy who had witnessed my moment with my coworker, and that was his very first rave ever. So it was amazing to have that happen. And then I met this other guy, Marcelo, in line at Lost and Found after DOS Energy ended, because one of my coworkers had lost her phone, and we were just there in line, like, trying to see if anyone had turned her phone in. So Marcelo had just moved to Utah at the time, but we found out through talking that we have mutual friends in the local community, and so we both just like, oh yeah, let's hang out sometime and be friends and stuff, and then as I'm talking to Marcelo and like getting his contact info, Kyle comes up, and he's just like, yo, dude, what's up? And apparently he and Marcelo had met, like previously earlier in the night, and had like talked and jived together and stuff. But basically every new friend that I made that night had previously met or interacted with one of the people in my rave squad that night. And that, I mean, yeah, you can say that that's just a huge coincidence, especially at a, small festival like DOS Energy. But honestly, it just blows my mind that kind of thing even happens. And for me, I don't call it a coincidence, because when it starts happening with that kind of frequency that it was happening for me, there's just a point where you have to say, all right, this isn't a coincidence anymore. The universe is clearly, trying to tell me something, and these people are supposed to be in my life, and all this crazy stuff, basically. I actually came to the realization at DOS Energy, because of all this crazy, like, oh my God, everybody that I met tonight had met somebody else in my rave squad. I came to this realization that, perhaps we really did all branch off from one singular unified consciousness, and all of these crazy synchronistic meetings and synchronistic circumstances that I've been experiencing at festivals and at raves, where every new person I met knew someone else in my rave fam, or like just crazy cosmic, oh my God, like, wow, connections with people. Perhaps these are pieces of the one trying to come back together and reunite with the other pieces that are, in these physical forms that we share. Anyway, let's oh man, I still have 2 festivals to talk about, guys, and I'm trying to get my guest on here by like 6:30. I had like 2 other tracks that I wanted to play, but I'm gonna skip that music for now, and I'm gonna go straight into Escape Psycho Circus, because this is a short one for me to talk about. But so at Escape Psycho Circus in Southern California, I went with J-Dubs, and we drove out there, and when it was time for us to get to the festival, we both honestly thought that we were going to end up missing out on Res completely because of how crazy the traffic was getting into the venue. And we both just like accepted and just said, you know what, as long as we don't completely miss her set, I won't be like, too bummed out. And so it's really crazy because somehow we ended up making it into her set for like the last 15 minutes or so. So we were like super stoked about that. And it was at Escape Psycho Circus that I actually met up with Tony and Vince again. Because as soon as we got in, J-Dubs saw Vince's totem right away. And so J-Dubs and I pushed our way across the sea of people to meet up with them. And yeah, it was really cool to reunite with those friends that I had made at EDC, who actually after Escape Psycho Circus, we ended up spending the night in Vince's house. So that was really cool. And so eventually J-Dubs and I decided to go to the Ferris wheel and check it out because we had never been on a Ferris wheel, on at an EDM festival. So we decided to go into the line at the Ferris wheel, and we're just standing there waiting in line, and we meet up with these cool ravers, and this chick Kiki, she sees my Guam EDM ambassador pin, and she asks me about it. And that's when I found out that Kiki, this random person that just ended up next to me at the Ferris wheel line, was from Guam. Like we got into this discussion about Guam and Saipan and stuff again, the typical, oh my god, like it's so cool to see somebody from home here. And yeah, so shortly after this whole meeting with Kiki, blowing our minds and stuff, next thing I know, I'm just engaging in conversation, with Kiki, and then out of nowhere, who comes up to us right next to us, has been standing next to us in line this whole time, and we had no idea, but Vince, who had lost the rest of his rave fam, and just ended up walking around the festival on his own, basically, and he just randomly decided, you know what, I think I'm going to check the Ferris wheel out at this time. At the same time that J-Dubs and I decided to hit up the Ferris wheel, and so we were both just like, whoa, dude, like, what are the odds that, like, you're right here with us right now? It's just crazy, like, universal connection type of stuff that goes on. Synchronicities abound at raves, like I said in my post. And so, oh my god. All right, so I'm gonna go straight into Decadence now. I wanted to play songs in between festivals, but I am, like I said, I'm trying to hit 6:30 for bringing on my guests. So again, you're listening to the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii on MSP Waves Radio. And Decadence. Oh my god, Decadence. Decadence SLC was an amazing experience for me, even though it didn't quite have like the same gravitas in terms of universal connections that previous festivals I had been to had. The crazy connections that I made there actually are still quite substantial, and I made some really good friends, some new friends at Decadence SLC, but there are two people I met that night who I will consider my best connections for that night. And the first one I met actually after I had just broken off from J-Dubs to go deeper into the crowd during Porter Robinson's set. I was trying to get front and center, and eventually I had to stop because there was just no more room for me to move up. Everybody in the crowd was just way too packed, right? And I ended up next to this guy, Michael, and he was just hanging out with his friends, and I just, the area that I stopped at, they were all just kind of like hanging out and enjoying the sounds. And I noticed that he had an LED whip on his neck, and so I just kind of like tapped him, and I was like, yo, dude, like, is that a whip, like an LED whip? And he was like, oh yeah, of course. And he was like, yeah, if we have some space later, I'll like whip it out and show it to you and stuff, and show it to you in action. And so we just ended up we started talking to each other, and we just really connected, and we had a lot of things in common, and now he's a cool new friend that I have in the area who I can hang out with and rave with, in the future. Yeah, so Michael, thank you for that. That was an amazing time. Yeah, it was so cool to make such a cool new friend. And then the second cool connection that I made that night, I was just hanging out with Michael, and this random first-time raver named Matt came up to us and started talking to us about candy. And he started telling us, like, oh yeah, this is my first rave, like, and I don't really have any candy to trade, but I'd love to have like a memory or a souvenir, I guess. And so I was wondering if you could give me some candy. And so Michael and I were both like, oh yeah, of course, dude, of course we'll give you some candy. This is your first rave. And it was Matt who I taught about Plur. Like, that was the very first person I've ever taught to about Plur at a festival setting. And it was such an amazing opportunity for me to really like share that, not just with Matt but actually with Michael, because Michael was right there with us, and he was just like, you know, paying attention to my explanation, and they were both just blown away, and Matt was just like, yo, that was like some life-changing, like life lesson stuff that you just shared with me, man. Thank you so much. And so yeah, we exchanged contact info, and I gave him his rave name and stuff, and it was just, you know, it was a lot of fun. So that was my Decadence SLC experience, and it was cool because now I have a new friend to share the rave scene with, and to teach more about the raves. And so yeah, with that, I'm gonna play one song before I move on to bringing my guests on the air. Thank you guys for being so patient. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you for listening in, and for being a part of this whole experience with me. Here is one. All right, and again, that was "One Smile" by Dada Life. I'm actually still trying to figure out this whole guest situation. Both of my guests that expressed interest in coming on tonight seem to have kind of dropped off. I don't see them in in the audience chat on the MSP server or on Discord either, or I mean on Twitch. So I'm just I'm just gonna play another track for you guys while I figure this out. And this is gonna be one of the tracks that I was going to play anyway earlier. So this is "I Can't Stop" by Flux Pavilion.
Hello.
All right, and once again, that was "I Can't Stop" by Flux Pavilion.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me? All right, can you hear me? Hello. Let's see. So I think he might be having the same issues. Hello, Nikki.
Hey.
Nick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
All
got you.
right,
You
awesome.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. All right, so everyone, this is Nick. I actually met him through my friend Michael, who I met at Decadence, who I just got done talking about. But Nick, why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners and kind of just share how long you've been raving and what your raving experience has been like, and if you have any crazy stories like the ones I've shared tonight about synchronistic meetings and events and stuff, please feel free to share. Uh, Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. You keep damn. So he keeps on moving into the back into the audience. You're gonna have to stay with me on the live on air channel for people to hear you.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, yo, no, I'm actually. So hold on, guys. I gotta send this real quick. Nick, I'm actually the one that's been sending you into my channel. Yo, can you still hear me if you're in this channel?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So just stay on this channel because yeah, I don't know what's going on, but he keeps on switching back to the other channel. But yeah, live radio, right, guys? I'm gonna move him one more time and see if this works.
I,
All
I
right. Nope, it keeps moving him back. All right, let's try my other guest and see if this one will work. Brad, you're about to come on the air. I'm about to move you into my channel. Just stay in this live on air channel when I do move you. All right, let's see. Let's move Brad onto the air. All right, Brad, can you hear me right now? It's saying that your mic is still muted, so you're gonna have to unmute yourself first.
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, everyone. So this is a different guest, actually. So this is my friend Brad, who I actually met him during EDC. Actually, it was we met from we met through Radiate, actually. So yeah, Brad, why don't you tell the audience more a little about yourself and like how long you've been raving, what your raving experience has been like, and if you've had any of these crazy synchronistic connections and meetings that I've been talking about all night.
So yeah, we did meet on Radiate. I guess EDC was my first real crack at a rave.
Oh, nice.
Like the music, the EDM style. Um, that big into it until probably like 2014. I had a couple friends in college that were pretty heavy into it and kind of got me hooked on it. At that time being in college, I didn't have a whole lot of money floating around, so I wasn't able to go to any crazy big festivals. Just did some like single shows and whatnot. Um, Last year, I had a buddy that I worked with going to EDC and how he's always wanted to do it and this and that, and I kind of said, "Hey, well, yeah, I'll go with you if you want to get in on some tickets." Day that the tickets went up for sale, I was traveling for Thanksgiving, I think it was, and I actually bought tickets for myself and my buddy came out of it and didn't want to pony up all the money, I guess, or whatever. So kind of like you, I had my tickets for EDC and didn't really have a plan on what was going to happen once I got there. Really fully commit to going until a couple days before I finally got my reserved and got a hotel on Radiate, which as you know, and I don't know if listeners and whatnot know, but it's kind of like a social media type thing for music festivals, essentially, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot of people say it's kind of like a Tinder for EDM people, but it's not just that. You know, there's no like when you swipe right to hey someone, you're not like there's not this implicit thing of like, oh yeah, I think you're hot and I want to like go out with you or whatever. You know, there's like people on Radiate actually like hey each other to like connect and build rave fams and like just talk about, you know, EDM culture in general, which is pretty sick.
So yeah, so I'd been in this big squad on Radiate. Everyone was going to EDC, and a guy had posted that his hookup for the hotel had fallen through. Had an extra bed in my room, so I kind of messaged him on the side and said, "Hey man, I'm first time I've never been my so I have this extra room or this extra bed if you bunk up with me or whatever." And he was kind of like, "Yeah man, really, are you serious? Like that'd be awesome." So, and this was like 3 days before the festival, so I'd never even really met this guy. Showed up at EDC. I messaged him on Facebook and said, "Hey man, I'm in town. Let me know when you get here, and I'll give you a hotel key, and you can go there and kind of get ready for the festival." And pretty late the first night, and I was already um, I think I was at the Luxor too, actually, with meeting up with another guy I had known from college and hadn't really talked to since then. Um, and so I found out he was at EDC just through Facebook, and kind of met up with him. It was when stay in the hotel with me. He finally showed up, and he was like, "Hey, I'm in town." I said, "Well, I'm not at the hotel, but if you want to come over to the Luxor, I'm with some other people at the Luxor, him and his sister, and kind of just going to the first night together." And there was about 6 of us that all went, and people that I had met either like that day or got to talk, and me and David, and it turns out that he was born about an hour from where I was born back in Ohio. A little like talk of, similar upbringings and knowing some
And
similar people. We had a mutual friend in common that was really weird, actually.
and this is the dude that you offered your spare bed to that you met on Radiate?
Yeah. So yeah,
Nice.
that's kind of like a crazy synchronicity. They're not as crazy as the ones you've had with all your festival experiences, but yeah, it was a little odd that I met this guy on Vegas like on a whim on this Radiate app, and it turns out he was born in like less than an hour from where I was, and we knew some of the same people, kind of just like a one-off situation. So
See, that's what I'm talking about though. Like raves and like EDM festivals are a breeding ground for synchronistic events like that. It's so crazy. Like a lot of people would be like, "Oh yeah, that's a nice coincidence," but if you've been in the festival circuit long enough and you've seen this kind of stuff happening over and over and over again, regardless of where you're at, there has to be something inside you that kind of clicks and says, "Yeah, that's definitely more than just a mere coincidence." I think.
I thought it was pretty crazy. So yeah, so night one, we kind of had a plan. I mean, I had never been to a festival that large, or any festival for that matter. And so we get there, and of course nobody has any cell phone service, and we went in at different times. You had to have your ID with you when you scanned your wristband going in. So everyone were in a line, and everyone got in, and I was kind of rejected, because I didn't have my ID. So I had to run back to the car and grab that. So by the time I finally made it into the festival, was like an hour later or whatever, and I couldn't meet up with any of these people that I had planned on. So I was kind of like, well, whatever, I'll go see who I want to see, and kind of just walk around and just take it all in the first night. And if I end up meeting with these guys later, then that's great. But if not, then I'll meet you. So kind of went off and did my own thing, and I ended up meeting back up with them by chance, kind of walking around, and through the crowd and ran into David later. And I mean, it is pretty crazy that, you know, you can be in there with like 100,000 people or whatever it was. And kind of to your point of being in the water line and seeing your friend that you had planned on meeting up with is kind of the same situation that I encountered.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's totally the same kind of thing, dude. It still blows my mind that kind of stuff happens though. Like, I mean, it's a literal sea of, you know, tens of thousands of people, and what are the odds that you are just gonna randomly bump into one of your friends, you know?
Well, I mean, that's kind of my experience. Night 2 and 3, I mean, we had again the same plan. Like, hey, we'll meet up at these times to see these sets together and whatnot. And the rest of it was we were just kind of like on our own. Like, hey, you go meet people and I'll go meet people and kind of, you know, grow our rave fam, I guess. And um, night 2 that we had all, me and you and all the guys on the Radiate had planned to meet up, and that kind of didn't go as planned, I guess, but worked out for the better. I mean, we ended up meeting other people, and I still talk to some of those same people through the chat and on Facebook and whatnot. And now, you know, I'm on here talking to you. So
Indeed. Yeah, that that whole Saturdays for the Boys meetup thing was pretty ingenious idea, and if we could have pulled it off, it would have been like one of those videos from EDC that gets like sent around everywhere, I feel like. But
like the hype video for next year's show or something crazy.
yeah. But it's just, yeah, the crazy traffic getting in just like screwed everyone, like in terms of meeting up on time. But yeah, like you said, it was cool because I feel like we met people that we were supposed to meet at that point, you know, and like whatever happened after that happened.
So I'm hoping to go to a couple more festivals this. I haven't bought my ticket for EDC yet. Because I had some other things since it moved. I had some other things already planned for the new weekend.
Ooh.
But I'm gonna, yeah. So because it was like the best 3 days of my life or whatever.
Right? Seriously though.
Figure something out, yeah.
So
I didn't sleep a whole hell of a lot, but it was worth every minute of not sleeping. I'll say that.
right? Like, what is sleep? So let's talk about, you know, what it is that you like or that you love the most about being in the rave scene, since you said that, you know, you haven't really been to too many, and EDC was like your first actual festival experience.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of like your other shows you talked about, like the plur aspect. I think that whole just everybody's so friendly, like vibe and random people and all these like crazy connections that you have with these people that you didn't ever know existed, and good time. And no one goes and just hangs out with their own group of friends. They all are kind of open and meeting new people and having new experiences and trying new types of music, and just completely open-minded on everything is what I like, and what I'll probably keep trying to their friends to get into the scene. Buddy,
Nice.
so we had a bachelor party for my friend this past October in Vegas, and we weren't really sure what all we wanted to do. And my other friend was like, well, Vegas always has these crazy shows at nightclubs and whatnot, so let's check like some schedules and see what's going on. And so it turns out Armin van Buren was playing at Omnia while we were there. Got to go see this Armin show. Like, let's take Tyler. I know he's not real big into EDM at all and probably hasn't listened to a lot of it, but it's his bachelor party, so, you know, screw it. Let's take him and let him experience an Armin show. And he ended up loving it and having the time of his life. And now he keeps sending me screenshots of all these things he finds on Pandora and Spotify and whatnot. And he's like, man, you got me into this music, and I'm hooked on it now, and I want to keep going to more shows and stuff. And so that's me happy that I'm like a really good friend of mine growing up. I didn't know he was ever into that kind of music, and him hooked, and a couple of my other buddies are starting to get into it. So just gonna keep
Nice.
spreading the plur vibes, man.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the themes, I guess, for this episode is your vibe attracts your tribe. And that's a saying that you'll hear all the time in the rave scene. And it's true, you know, it goes along with this whole, like, festival stories that I've been talking about all night, is that if you radiate plur, you know, people who are also radiating plur will see you and they'll get drawn to you, and that's how, you know, those type of bonds are formed. um I don't know, it's just the universe just like pushes people in your direction when they're supposed to be, and when you're at the right frequency or something, you know. So it's cool that you're bringing more friends into EDM, and you know, it's good that you have a good understanding of EDM culture and of plur vibes, and you're able to share those with them. And hopefully you'll bring them to their first festival and show them for real what the, you know, what plur vibes is all about and what the EDM culture really is. Let's see, Brad, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So, we are kind of cutting it close on the time, and so I make it a point to ask all my guests that come onto my show what their dreams in life are, because this is called The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. So let's open up the next like 3 or 4 minutes or so for you to just kind of give us a nice little overview of what it is you dream about in life, and where you see yourself and where you'd like to be, that kind of stuff, you know.
So one of my dreams, I mean, I want to keep experiencing different cultures and different like mindsets and people and food. So I guess just like travel in general. I've been kind of lucky in the past to go to a couple different countries, and I'm trying to hit all 50 states and just see how different in their own little, you know, bubbles of culture and whatnot. You know, whether that's in Ohio or Florida or they may be from. So one of my dreams is to just travel the world and create these little bonds with, I'll call right now, random people that might not be so random. After all, that to open my mind and kind of share what I've learned on traveling with other people, and kind of study into like a whole, don't always believe what you see, and be open to trying new things and experiencing new things, and open to other people's thoughts on life, and kind of not your own little bubble, and a
Nice.
whole
Yeah, and that's
utopian type
something
thing.
that I feel, you know, being a part of the rave scene and the rave culture and plur life, that's something that really helps with that. You know, it's like it just, if you take someone who's completely new to raves and has no understanding of it, and you take them to a festival like EDC and show them, you know, what it really is about, then, like, typically in my experience anyway, with friends that I've brought into EDM, they start to see life from a different perspective, just as a natural result of having been to an EDM festival.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's kind of what opened me up to more of this wanting to travel type thing. I mean, before I would have thought, hey, me and you know, David don't have anything in common, but we meet up at an EDM show, and it turns out we know some of the same people, and we're from close to the same hometown, and it's the music that brought us together. So world that have that I can have that same connection with, if I can just open up and get their little piece of the story when we finally do share the music together and go in my ride.
Exactly. All right. Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on the air with me tonight, and for sharing, you know, a little more about yourself, and for talking about your EDM experiences. I really appreciate that. Is there any like last comments or shout outs or anything you'd like to say before we wrap this stuff up?
For having me on, and I love your show, and I can't wait for the next 100 episodes.
All right, man. Thank you so much for the support, man. I really, really appreciate it. So, guys, this is the end of the 5th episode of the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. You've been listening to my friend Brad talk about his experiences with EDM festivals and EDM shows and sharing EDM music with his friends. Thank you again for being here and for being a part of this experience with me tonight. Everyone in the audience too as well. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for being here and for tuning in. And I also do want to say thank you again to Global Cop and Rondon and the station managers at MSP Waves Radio for allowing me to have this show and for supporting my efforts every step along the way. And with that, I leave you guys now with the track that I always close my shows out to, Ordinary Life by The Prophet.